Christian Heroes Then and Now, Eric Liddell. Something Greater Than Gold by Janet and Geoff Benge. Chapter 17, A Very Special Person. 2 months later, Florence Liddell was standing in the kitchen of her parents' home in Toronto, where she was staying. 2 family friends knocked at the door, and Flo invited them in. From the expression on their faces, Flo guessed something was wrong. As she dried her hands on a dish towel, she tried to imagine what it could be. She never thought for a single moment that her friends had come to tell her about her husband's death. As soon as she heard the news, Flo began to shudder. She felt as though something had grabbed her stomach and was squeezing it. As she slumped into a chair, huge sobs began to erupt. Flo wept bitterly, trying to come to terms in her heart and her mind with what she had just heard. How could it be? The last time she had seen Eric, he was a strong, healthy 38-year-old man. Now she had to accept the fact that he died in a Japanese internment camp. It hardly seemed possible. Flo's visitors explained that the doctors in Whiteston had performed an autopsy on Eric's body and had found a massive tumor on the left side of Eric's brain. Flo took some comfort in this. As a nurse, she knew that in 1945 there was nothing that could have been done to save Eric's life, not even the most modern hospital in the world. The Flying Scotsman, dead at 43. These words, printed in large black type, stopped many Scottish men and women in their tracks as they walked past newspaper stands from Edinburgh to Glasgow. The newspapers rushed to outdo each other in praise for their departed national hero. Scotland has lost a son who did her proud every hour of his life, reported the Glasgow Evening News. One of the best known and most admired men who ever took part in sport, whose devotion to his principles won him the highest esteem, declared the Edinburgh Evening News. Just as the whole of Whiteston internment camp had mourned Eric's death, so it seemed did all of Scotland. Memorial services were held in every city and village in the nation. A national committee was formed to launch the Eric Liddell Memorial Fund. Collections were taken up at rugby games, foot races, school fairs, and church picnics. The money soon mounted up. Many people, both rich and poor, wanted to honor the memory of a man they were proud of. The money from the fund was for 2 things. First, money was given to Flo to help her raise the 3 daughters Eric had left behind. Second, a yearly prize was set up in Eric's name. The Eric Liddell Challenge Trophy was awarded to the best performance of the year at the Scottish Schools Athletic Association Championship track meet. Eltham College in London added an extension to one of its buildings and named it Liddell House. On August 17th, 1945, 6 months after Eric had been buried, the internees at Whiteston heard an airplane buzzing overhead. The schoolchildren raced outside and were soon joined by the cooks, clothes washers, and everyone else who was not in a hospital bed. The plane turned and swept low over the camp. It was a B-24 bomber, an American plane. The internees went wild with joy. They waved shirts and towels and yelled until they were hoarse. The plane turned again and this time came even closer. The people on the ground could see the pilot waving back to them. They could also read the name painted on the side of the plane, Armored Angel. Suddenly, the plane veered to the north and climbed steeply as if it were going to fly off. But then a door on the side of the plane opened and 7 paratroopers jumped out. The internees could not be stopped. They forgot all about the Japanese guards as they surged toward the massive gates that held them captive for 2 years. The Japanese guards stepped back as the gates were pushed open. The prisoners ran towards the paratroopers. Within minutes, they found the GIs and hoisted them onto their shoulders. Amidst cheers and shouts, the GIs were paraded triumphantly back to camp. Everyone knew they were free. It was only a matter of time before they would see their families and their homelands again. Over the next month, Whitesyn internment camp was closed down. First, the sick and elderly were shipped out, and then unaccompanied children, followed by families and single men and women. As they left, many people made one last trip to the graveyard where a simple wooden cross marked the grave of a man who had been too good of a friend to ever forget. In the years to come, many of the internees at Whitesyn would write books and magazine articles about their experiences. Even though there had been up to 1,800 people in the camp, every single written account of life at Whitesyn includes memories of Eric Liddell. In A Boy's War, David Mitchell tells how Uncle Eric would organize their sports meetings. In Shantung Compound, the story of men and women under pressure, Gilkey Langdon writes that Eric Liddell was one of the few people in camp everyone trusted to be fair. In another book, Courtyard of the Happy Way, Norman Cliff writes of Eric, the most outstanding Whitesyn personality, in his early 40s, quiet-spoken, and with a permanent smile. Eric was the finest Christian man I have ever had the privilege of meeting. Finally, the famous British filmmaker Sir David Putnam heard about the modest Scotsman who had impacted so many lives. He decided to make a movie about Eric, which he called Chariots of Fire. In 1981, the movie won the Academy Award for Best Picture. Eric would probably have laughed if he had known a movie would be made about him. He never considered himself anything special. He was just a man who tried to honor God and help people in need. In the end, achieving those two simple goals made him a very special person to countless people around the world. About the authors. Janet and Geoff Benge are a husband and wife writing team with more than 30 years of writing experience. Janet is a former elementary school teacher. Geoff holds a degree in history. Originally from New Zealand, the Benges spent 10 years serving with Youth with a Mission. They have 2 daughters, Laura and Shannon, and an adopted son, Leto. They make their home in the Orlando, Florida area.